Hey, good morning, everyone. So the purpose of this video is to walk you through 3 potential master schedule scenarios that have come about as a result of the creativity and hard work of Eisenhower's 2020 Scheduling Committee. At 14 members strong, this multidisciplinary group of core, exploratory, and performing arts teachers, along with counselors and administrators, has invested countless hours in an effort to get the most out of the time we are together in school. Their work began long before FIDs and has continued throughout our shift to distance work and learning. Before we continue, folks, we recognize that at the moment we are watching this, we are in the middle of a public health crisis and a time of great uncertainty. Many of us, myself included, wonder what next month, next week, next month will look like for ourselves, for our families, let alone the fall at EMS. But with that being said, and for the purposes of this exercise, I do ask that you envision that students and staff are permitted in the building in September. It's safe for us to do so, and that we are following something that resembles a traditional school day. As you do that, consider what we will need to support our students and each other intellectually, socially, emotionally, particularly on the heels of these challenging times. Before we get into the particular models that we're going to share with you, I did just want to provide you with some background as to how we got here. So the scheduling committee held some initial brainstorming sessions back in the winter, and then the group was asked to draft schedules that met the following criteria. Needed to, of course, be compliant with the REA collective bargaining agreement, and in particular, the 250 minutes of pupil contact time that we are limited to. We were trying to achieve greater equity in that pupil contact time. That was one of the pieces of feedback that we got between core and exploratory teachers. We wanted all teachers to have full schedules. We wanted to be able to proudly share that with my bosses and the Board of Ed. We wanted to preserve our teaming model. We are committed to that at EMS. That means every teacher teaches 4 classes, an extension period, and then has a common prep and a common PLC or team planning period. We needed to create time for morning meeting and homeroom at the start of the day. I really appreciate everyone's flexibility this year. I think student council hit it out of the park with morning announcements in the auditorium. And we, as a result of that time together, had the opportunity to do celebrations like Student Spotlight, highlight different field trips, things like that, in an effort to build our school-wide community and identity. And we need homeroom to follow that so that there's a bit of a transition into our first core class. I recognize that this year, again, some of our celebrations kind of bled into first period. Our core teachers are awesome. You guys rolled with it, but we do owe it to you to kind of build in a little bit of a buffer there because, you know, sometimes those celebrations take a little bit longer than you might plan that they will. So homeroom happening at the start of the day does at least give us a little bit of wiggle room. We asked the group to reduce the total number of lunch sessions. A few years ago, we had over 600 kids at EMS. We needed 4 lunch periods to feed them all. And of course, we wanted to keep band, orchestra, and choir separate from the exploratory schedule in order to make sure that those youngsters not only could pursue their passions in areas of performing arts, but also get the full middle school experience when it came to those exploratory classes. And then most importantly, from all of our stakeholder groups, we were asked to have no major losses in contact time for any particular stakeholder group. In other words, not taking away from core time or from band, orchestra, choir time in order to achieve those homeroom periods in the morning, things like that, which again is why it was important for us to reduce the total number of lunch sessions so that we could find some time there. So the group came up with 6 or 7 initial scenarios. They met, they dialogued, and eventually they narrowed it down to the 3 that we are going to be sharing with you all now. First up is Mrs. Icabino, and she will be walking you through what we are calling Scenario 1. So I will turn it over to her now.
Hi all, here to discuss the first schedule that's being proposed to you. The similar is fairly similar to what we currently have. There are some key differences, however. I arranged this so that the schedule would have follow 8th grade student that does not have band orchestra choir would follow the schedule that's listed below on the left-hand side here. And then next to it would be an 8th grade band orchestra choir student would follow that schedule. And again, for 7th grade, this is the schedule below that non-Bach kids would follow, and then the schedule that Bach students would follow. So the day would start with morning meeting, and then it would have a morning bell before a homeroom period. So this is one of the benefits. Homeroom would no longer be in the middle of the school day. It would be at the start of the day. I think that another key feature, another benefit to this schedule is the fact that block 1 is starting later. It would have an 8:04 start. This would allow us to have a little more flexibility with morning meetings, and would also allow us some flexibility if there are busing issues. So those are 2 added benefits to this schedule. And then the schedule basically goes as we currently have until you get to block 4. So block 4 is split up into 3 sections, A, B, and C. A student that is not a band orchestra or choir student would have 2 extension periods. This was to allow for band orchestra choir students to have the opportunity to have a extension period. It also allows for the band orchestra choir periods to have a break in between the 7th grade and then the 8th grade, so that the students could easily transition in the music hallway with their instruments and things like that in between 2 periods. So the 2 extension periods for any non-Bach students would basically be, one would be like a study hall, and then another would be some sort of extension enrichment. This could be an area where we could address basic skills, study skills. I was thinking community service type activities, things like that. This is something that administration would work with us on. So 8th grade students that are not band orchestra choir would have lunch, and then they would have those 2 extension periods. Band orchestra choir would have their class first, then lunch, and then they would have their extension period. Again, not forcing them to leave their lunches early to seek assistance if they need it. And then 7th grade basically works the same way. Like I said, some issues, we do have a 54-minute block of extension for any non-band orchestra choir students. So this is obviously a large amount of time. The one thing that I also kind of added to this, so teachers could get a feel what their schedule will be looking like. So I split it up. So we have 8th grade teachers and 7th grade teachers, and then our cycle teachers. It's important to realize that all teachers would be responsible for teaching 4 core classes, and then they would have a prep, they would have a lunch period, they would have an extension period. So that would be as far as that study hall or possibly that enrichment. They would have a duty so that we don't go over the 240, so no teacher would teach 2 extension periods. And then again, a prep or team at the to fulfill the last class. So that's basically the schedule. If you have questions, feel free to reach out.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Icabino, for that. Next up, we are going to just keep on rolling. We have Mrs. Blewett. This is schedule proposal 2. It is broken up into 2 parts. So when we get done with part 1, just bear with me for a moment, and I will load up part 2 for you. So again, this is schedule proposal 2. from Mrs. Blewett.
Hi, everybody. It's Jessica. I'm going to go through schedule proposal number 2. This is the one that I put together. I'm going to highlight some of the things that are different with this schedule as opposed to the one that we currently have. So the first thing I want to go through is that there is time for morning meeting every day for 5 minutes from 7:55 to 8 o'clock. And then block 1 for everyone is going to be 5 minutes longer. This is to allow for a homeroom in the morning. All of the block classes are 50 minutes long. So this would be core classes, cycle classes, PE, world language, all of them are 50 minutes long. And then the major difference is I took out a block. So we're on a 6-block day, and in the middle of the day, the whole school closes down for 2 blocks of lunch. So it's lunch block A and lunch block B, which the whole time would be from 10:43 to 11:56. So that allows for 35 minutes for each of those blocks for lunch, band orchestra choir, extra time, core extension, whatever we're calling it. And the main difference here is that because we have the 2 lunches and everyone is in these 2 blocks, there is no time where people should be in the hallway at different times. Like the current schedule we have now, the 7th graders are still in a core class while the 8th graders are at lunch. Here, the whole school stops and a student is either in core extension, the band orchestra choir rooms, or the lunchroom. And so everyone's moving at the exact same time. There isn't that weird overlap in our schedule that we currently have. The big difference that comes of this is that the lunches now are mixed grade. So lunch A would be the 7th grade students that take band orchestra choir and the 8th grade students that are not in band orchestra choir. So during lunch A, in the lunchroom would be those students, the 7th graders that take band orchestra choir and the 8th graders that do not. And also during block A would be the 8th graders would be in the music wing doing their band orchestra choir classes, and the 7th graders that do not take band orchestra choir would be in their core extension extra time period. So there is really 3 different places that they would either be: in the band orchestra choir wing, in the lunchroom, or in a core extension extra time room. And then lunch B would flip-flop, where we would have in the lunchroom, we'd have the 7th graders that do not take band orchestra choir, the 8th grade students that just came from band orchestra choir. And that means that those 7th graders that just had lunch that are in band orchestra choir would now be moving to the band room. And the 8th graders that just had lunch that have a core extension period would now be in their core extension room. With this schedule, any students that are in band orchestra choir would still have the opportunity to go to see their teacher for extra help or to make up work. Just like they do now, they'd have to leave the lunchroom, they would need a pass, and they'd have to go to see their teacher, okay? Another major difference with my schedule is, I'm gonna scroll down a little bit, is that I made an effort to try to switch up the duties so that a core extension teacher is not always in, a core teacher is not always in core extension, and that a cycle teacher only has lunch duty. So here is some sample duty rotation. So everyone would have a duty where they have core extension for a couple days a week, and then everyone would have a duty where they have a lunch duty a couple, 1 or 2 days during the week. So I'm just going to use Jean Tom, our 7th grade teacher, number 2. I just numbered it for the sake of, if someone was to switch grades, or, if we had a master schedule, if, someone was to retire or to, move to another building, we could always just pop in the new person in their slot. So for my schedule, teacher number 2 is Jean Tom. So if I look over here, the 7th grade teachers would be eating lunch during lunch B. So they would have the second lunch. And then for lunch A would be their duty. So if I'm Jean Tom, teacher number 2, on Mondays, she would be in the cafeteria for lunch duty. On Tuesday, she would be in her room for extra time. She'd have a class. She would be again in there on Wednesday. Tuesday, she'd have lunch duty. Thursday, she'd have lunch duty again. And then on Friday, she would have extra time. Okay. So I'm going to stop this video here, and then I will add more. Okay. Because I'm running out of time on my space. Okay, for part 2 of the video, I'm just gonna go, just use another 7th grade teacher as an example. So Lauren Brennan, she's teacher number 17. Again, she would eat lunch during lunch B. The second block of lunch would be her lunch. So she would never have a duty or anything that day. And then she would be available for duties for lunch A. So she is teacher number 17. She would be in an extra time room on Monday. On Tuesday, she'd also have extra time. And then she would have lunch duty on Wednesday, Friday, and then the extra time she'd also be in on Thursday. This would allow for teachers to share a room. So like the kids would be assigned a certain room, and then the teachers may be rotating in and out of it. This is also similar to a few years ago when we had lunch duty. The cycle teachers had lunch duty. You would just tell the kids, I'm not available on, Tuesdays and Fridays. So whenever your lunch duty would be, they couldn't come for extra help that day. And then you'd also, the rotation in the room might be different. So it might be the core teacher is assigned a certain room, and then the cycle teachers might just rotate. So like on a day that Jean Tom has lunch duty, then whatever cycle teacher is available would take her room. So that's where the schedule would work out. Same thing happens with the 8th grade teachers. So for the 8th grade teachers, we would be eating lunch. Lunch A would be our lunch, 35 minutes every day. And then lunch B is when we would have our duty. So if I'm going to use, Marjorie Richmond, teacher number 32, she would have the extra time room on Monday, lunch duty on Tuesday. She would have extra time on Wednesday, extra time Thursday, and then on Friday she would end with a lunch duty. So the way it works out, most teachers have a lunch duty twice a week and then an extra time room 3 times a week. I did it for myself. I am teacher 39, and it works out that I only have lunch duty once a week. So people towards the end of the numbers, you might have it just once, and then you'd have extra time the other 4 days a week. But it just kind of helps to break it down so that there's always cycle teachers that are available, for extra help, and then they're not the only ones that have to do lunch duty. It just kind of splits it. So I put underneath here just a time breakout. So everyone would have the 5-minute duty in the morning. So the cycle teachers and PE teachers would be the ones that would have to go down to the auditorium for morning duty, world language as well. And then the cycle teachers, 7th and 8th grade, would be the ones that have the 5-minute duty during homeroom. Everyone has the same number of teaching time. Everyone teaches for 4 50-minute blocks. Everyone gets a 50-minute prep. Everyone gets a 35-minute lunch, and then a 35-minute lunchroom or work time core extension duty. So all teachers have the exact same time. So for the morning meeting, the teachers that would be responsible for going to morning meeting would be world language, cycle, PE, because the 7th and the 8th grade teachers have a 5-minute homeroom in the morning. So that's how it works. So if you look at the schedule here, from 7:55 to 8 o'clock as a cycle teacher, I would not have a duty then. The world language teachers would have a duty then. And then when we have a 5-minute duty during homeroom, cycle teachers, core teachers would have their 5-minute duty during this block 1 homeroom time. The cycle, world language, PE teachers would have 5 extra minutes during that time because they would not be having a homeroom then. Okay, so that's it. If you have any questions, you can just shoot me an email. So hopefully that explains my schedule on the changes that I have made. All right, thank you. Bye.
And thank you, Mrs. Blewett. So again, folks, that was scenario number 2. And then finally, we have Mrs. Swaim, who was kind enough to narrate, our 3rd scenario. So Here you go.
Hi everyone, it's Jess, and I'm just going to walk you through schedule proposal number 3, so we can compare how it is like and unlike our current schedule. The first thing you'll notice is that morning meeting would be memorialized on this schedule. We have it here starting at 7:55 to 7:57. We could still, of course, continue our normal procedure of starting once most of the kids have arrived and finding a few extra minutes after that. But students will go from there to what is now going to be their homeroom, and that will be the same as their Block 1 class. However, that time is now specifically dedicated to homeroom activities. There would then be no, obviously, passing time between homeroom and their Block 1 class because they are in the same place. All of the core academic courses and exploratory classes would remain 50 minutes under this model. The major difference between this model and what we currently have is the block in the middle of the day when Bach and enrichment and lunches take place. So that you'll see here that Block 4 is sort of like a unit lunch that we've divided into 2 chunks. For Block 4A, if you're a 7th grade student, you would go to your Bach ensemble or enrichment, extra help, and extension activity. And from there into Block 4B is when you would have your lunch. So all 7th graders would be eating lunch at the same time together. 8th graders is the same thing, just in reverse. They would eat lunch all together for Block 4A and go to their Bach periods and extension and extra help in Block 4B. So this would limit the distraction in the hallway when an academic class is taking place and kids are being dismissed from lunch, and we know that the middle of the day can be a little bit chaotic. Then blocks 5, 6, and 7 again would be 50-minute periods. You will also notice that the enrichment Bach periods are 1 minute shorter than currently. We could make them both 34 minutes, but right now we wanted to make sure that we had as much passing time between 4A and 4B as possible, because it will take the band and music and choir directors some time to kind of break down their first ensemble to prepare for the new group coming in. So right now they do have 7 minutes to allow that to happen a little bit more efficiently. Under this model, everyone, all the teaching staff in the building would have 239 minutes of pupil contact time. That is comprised of the 4 official class periods that you teach, plus 6 minutes of homeroom that everyone would participate in, and the 33 minutes of the extension or your Bach ensemble period. We are hoping that by narrowing it down to 2 of those periods, we will be better able to utilize the talent that we have in the building to make it so not each team teacher has a core extension each day and our exploratory teachers have lunch duty. We want to be able to have a little bit more variety to rotate, so there's a little bit more equity, and so skill sets are used as efficiently as possible. The last thing I wanted to point out before I sign off is that by putting everyone together in that period or Block 4 chunk, it opens up 2 periods in the day where both 7th and 8th graders are in a team class at the same time. So as it is right now, only Block 1 of the day are 7th and 8th graders in science, social studies, language arts, or math. If we were to go forward with this model, Block 5 would have that same situation. And again, all the teachers would have their prep period, a lunch period, and their PLC/team period. So that's the basic overview. Please feel free to send me an email if you think of any questions that I can answer for you. Thanks to everyone.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Swain. So there you have it, folks. What we're going to do is attach this video to an email. These schedules and this video are all going to be available for you to further review in EMS important docs. Go into there, go to schedules and staffing, and then look for a folder called 2020-2021 schedule scenarios. I'm going to link everything up in this email as well. Please, as you're reflecting, when you find some time to take, bits and chunks out of this project, most of all, just consider which schedule you think is going to best meet the needs of the whole child and the whole staff member in both the short and long-term basis. What we're going to ask is for a first choice and a second choice and some type of reasoning in a anonymous Google form. That link to that form is also going to be included in the email that we're sending. We'll need those responses no later than 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, May 21st. So that'll give you just about a week to take a look, digest, reflect. It's going to be an anonymous survey, but we are going to require that first choice, that second choice, as well as something in the comment or reason box. The reason for that is that I don't want to misinterpret why you selected a particular scenario as your first or second choice. We're going to give you the option of providing your name at the end, just in case there is a particular point you want to make or something that you want to further discuss before we make any kind of final decisions. As the coming weeks and months unfold, we will continuously reevaluate where we are from a health and safety standpoint and make that the key factor in any decision making that we do. Of course, that also includes any mandates from the governor, Department of Ed, and our central office administration. Again, focus on what next year could look like. Try to put some of the static off to the side and make your decisions and your recommendations from there. I may not know when this is going to happen because of all those factors we just discussed that are outside of our control, but I can tell you that eventually it's going to happen. We do need to update our schedule to fit the number of kids that we have, the goals that we have as a school, and the like. So I hope you take advantage of this chance to weigh in. Our committee has worked so hard to provide you with these three scenarios. And before I sign off, I just want to thank you all for the time that you're investing into thinking about these scenarios. And I really do appreciate and value your input. So that's it, folks. Have a great day. Have a great night whenever it is that you're reading this. Hope you're well. And we will talk soon. Bye-bye.